Have you ever heard a story so unbelievable you weren't sure if it was a tall tale or a miraculous truth? Picture a quiet little town tucked beneath the snow-capped peaks near Glacier National Park. One fateful afternoon, a curious bear wandered into a family's home, its massive paws padding across the threshold. Terrifying, right? But what happened next is nothing short of extraordinary. An unbreakable bond formed between the strangest of friends, a little girl and a wild animal. And as word spread, the entire town rallied to witness a moment so profound, it changed their lives forever. Here's the full story. The mid-afternoon sun poured through the windows of the Rogers family home, gilding the worn wooden floors and scattering warm light across the plush living room rug. The tiny town of Stillwater, Montana, just 30 miles from Glacier National Park, was built around a single winding road that led to the mountains. It was a place where people knew each other's names, waved as they passed by, and shared hush-hush rumors that spread as quickly as wildfire through the dense pine forests. In this unassuming town lived 8-year-old Charlotte Rogers, a girl with bright, inquisitive eyes and a fearless soul. The Rogers family home was a modest log cabin perched on a gentle slope near a meandering creek. Towering evergreens guarded the house, their branches rustling with a chorus of chickadees and red squirrels. The water of the creek danced under the sun, glimmering like a secret promise. Charlotte's father, Zachary Rogers, worked as a ranger in Glacier National Park, and his love of nature had seeped into the very essence of the family. Each morning, he rose with the sunrise to check on the wilderness, ensuring the safe coexistence of wildlife and visitors alike. Charlotte's mother, Emily Rogers, a schoolteacher in Stillwater, believed in nurturing curiosity. She wanted Charlotte to learn respect for every living creature, from ladybugs to the majestic elk that wandered by in winter. On the day that changed everything, Charlotte was alone in the house. Her mother had taken a weekend trip to Helena for a professional conference. Her father was called urgently to the far side of the park, where a group of reckless campers had strayed off the trails. "The hikers are in trouble," he told her that morning, pressing a gentle kiss to her forehead. "I'll be back by nightfall. You'll be fine here, sweetie. You know where the phone numbers are." And Charlotte, with her usual confidence, nodded. "I'll be okay, Dad. I have my books and I have my chores to keep me busy." Usually her father arranged for a neighbor to check in, but everyone was preoccupied. Miss Williams was out of town, the nearest relatives were states away, and there'd never been any trouble in that quiet corner of Stillwater. Charlotte had grown up around animals. Her father had taught her to handle everything from baby foxes with caution to how to act if she ever encountered a bear in the wild. The cardinal rule was, do not approach them, and if they approach you, remain calm but keep your distance. When the sun hit its zenith, Charlotte was sitting at the small wooden kitchen table, finishing the last crumb of her grilled cheese sandwich. Through the open window, she caught a glimpse of a dark shape moving among the trees. A wave of curiosity rippled through her, but she brushed it off as a wandering deer until she heard the scratching sound at the back door. Still barefoot, Charlotte padded toward the door, her heart skipping. At first, she suspected it might be a raccoon. Those little creatures were always knocking over garbage cans and rummaging through leftover scraps. She peered through the large glass pane, pressing her face close, trying to see what was making that persistent noise. Her breath caught in her throat. There, towering over the threshold, stood a bear. It wasn't a particularly large grizzly, but it was more than big enough to strike fear into the heart of any adult, let alone an 8-year-old child. Dark brown fur, a wide muzzle, and intelligent, searching eyes. It sniffed the door, curious, then reared back, resting its large paws against the wall with a gentle thud. Charlotte's father had always said, "If you see a bear, remain calm. Do not run. Show it respect." She recalled all the rules in a flash, but panic threatened to overtake her. Her heart hammered and her fingers trembled on the doorframe. She thought of her father's voice, steady as a rock. Sometimes animals get curious about homes, especially if they smell food. Keep your distance, be quiet and let them move on. But the bear didn't move on. Instead, it tried to follow the scent of the grilled cheese that lingered in the air. It pressed its nose against the window, leaving a small patch of condensation as it panted. With a clumsy swipe, it pawed at the door's handle, and then, to Charlotte's horror, the handle gave way. The door cracked open. She stumbled back, her eyes wide. She'd locked the door, hadn't she? She realized with a jolt that she'd simply closed it, forgetting to slide the deadbolt home. That was the only barrier keeping this massive creature from entering her home. In the next breath, the bear pushed its way inside. A primal surge of terror rose in Charlotte, but she forced herself to remain as calm as possible. Her father's words guided her. Do not scream, do not panic. She slowly backed away, heading toward the living room. The bear, snuffling and curious, stepped over the threshold. Even from across the kitchen, the size of its body made her quake with dread. It was bigger than any dog she'd ever seen, and its presence seemed to fill the air with a strange, tense electricity. The bear's ears twitched, picking up the soft squeak of the kitchen floor as Charlotte inched away. Her brain raced. Should I hide? Should I run? She knew running would spark the bear's chase instinct. She glanced toward the living room where her phone lay on the coffee table. Maybe she could call her father. But even if he answered, it would be at least an hour before he could get back, possibly more. She slid a foot backward. The bear lumbered forward. Its nostrils flared, likely smelling the remnants of cheese and butter from her sandwich. It made a low, curious sound that echoed in the tiny cabin. Charlotte had a fleeting thought to lure the bear back outside with food, but she had no idea if that would work or simply embolden it. Then, the strangest thing happened. The bear lifted its muzzle and gazed right at Charlotte. Their eyes met. In that single, timeless moment, she remembered her father's teachings about wildlife. They're not monsters, Charlotte. They're just living beings with instincts. They can sense fear. They can sense aggression. Keep your heart steady. There was no aggression in the bear's posture, just a raw hunger for something, maybe the leftover aroma of grilled cheese. The bear looked almost confused, or perhaps just startled to find a little girl instead of something else. Charlotte swallowed, summoning the courage that had always glowed deep within her. Slowly, carefully, she reached out a hand, as though to wave the bear away. "Hey, big guy," she whispered, her voice shaking but gentle. I don't have any more food here." The bear cocked its head, ears perking. Another snuffle. It took another step, its claws scraping the wooden floor. With a flash of clarity, Charlotte realized that if this bear got spooked, the consequences could be devastating. The tension in her chest was immense, but she steadied her breathing, recalling something her mother often said: "Music calms the anxious heart." In a moment of improbable bravery and a childhood logic that grown-ups often lose, Charlotte began to hum. A soft, trembling lullaby drifted from her lips, the same tune her mother would sing to her on stormy nights when the thunder shook their windows. She didn't know what else to do. Perhaps she hoped it would soothe her own terror. The effect was more profound than she could have imagined. The bear twitched its ears again and took a step closer. Instead of roaring or charging, it let out a small huff. Gradually, Charlotte knelt on the floor to make herself look smaller, continuing her gentle tune. She felt adrenaline surge in her veins. Any sudden move, and the bear might lash out. But the lullaby spilled from her, a testament to innocence and the silent power of compassion. The bear gazed at her, rocking its massive head from side to side, as though trying to make sense of this human child. Her humming carried on for what felt like an eternity. Slowly, the bear relaxed. Its hulking shoulders lowered, the tension in its body softened, the animal let out a soft grunt. And then, unbelievably, it settled onto the floor a few feet away from Charlotte. Its eyes flickered with some primal curiosity, but it didn't pounce. Charlotte continued the lullaby, tears prickling the corners of her eyes. Every nerve in her body told her this was the most dangerous situation she'd ever been in, yet there was also a strange sense of awe. She was in the presence of a wild creature, a being of the forest, a living symbol of power and grace. Minutes passed, though it seemed like hours. Then, as if pulled by a new scent or some internal instinct, the bear rose. Charlotte braced herself, but it merely lumbered toward the open door. Its huge paws made the floor creak ominously. Before leaving, it turned its head once, looking back at Charlotte with an unreadable expression. And then it slipped out into the warm afternoon, vanishing among the pine trees. Charlotte collapsed onto the floor, the lullaby finally catching in her throat as she started to sob. Relief, awe, and lingering fear collided in her young heart. She had faced a bear indoors, mere feet away, and neither she nor the bear was hurt. How could this possibly have happened? As soon as the bear left, Charlotte stumbled to the phone. She could barely punch in the numbers, her hands trembling so badly. She called her father, who answered in a breathless, static-laden voice from somewhere deep in the park. "Charlotte?" he said, concerned. "What's the matter?" Between sobs and gulped breaths, she told him everything. The bear at the door handle slipping open, her lullaby. "Stay calm," her father said, trying to soothe her while mounting his horse to head back. Because the terrain made it impossible to drive quickly. "Lock that door, go to your room, and wait for me. I'll be home as soon as I can." Charlotte did as told. She moved to her bedroom, locked the door, and sat on the bed, hugging her knees to her chest. She could still feel the bear's presence, the weight of its gaze, as though it had somehow marked her with its spirit. She was simultaneously terrified and, strangely, filled with a sense of wonder. It took her father nearly 2 hours to return. By then, the sun hung low in the sky, painting the horizon with streaks of pink and orange. With him came a couple of other rangers, all of them armed with tranquilizer rifles, just in case. They searched the area, found no sign of the bear, and then, satisfied that Charlotte was safe, they retreated indoors to hear her tale in full. She recounted every detail, from the moment she first heard the scratching to the lullaby she'd sung. At first, the rangers exchanged skeptical glances. Was it possible that a child's lullaby had calmed a bear? But Charlotte's sincerity was undeniable, and the physical evidence, the door half ajar, the fresh marks from the bear's claws, couldn't be denied. A child's imagination might conjure all sorts of flourishes, but it couldn't fake claw marks on the wooden panels. Word spread quickly through Stillwater. News traveled from neighbor to neighbor. People who'd known Charlotte all her life were stunned. Some refused to believe it, they insisted. There must have been some other explanation. Others were enthralled by the idea that a little girl had faced a bear in her own kitchen and sang to it like a wayward pet. Many of the older residents were simply grateful nobody was hurt. By the next morning, local reporter Marcia Teller from the Stillwater Gazette knocked on the Rogers' front door. Charlotte, still overwhelmed by what had happened, was hesitant to talk. But her father and mother, who had rushed back from Helena the moment she heard aloud a gentle interview, hoping the townsfolk would learn something about respect for wildlife from the story. Marcia's article ran a week later under the headline, "Bear breaks into Rogers' home, 8-year-old Charlotte's incredible response leaves all of Stillwater in awe." It recounted the event with colorful details, capturing the imaginations of readers across the county. Soon enough, local TV stations picked up on the story, sending their own reporters to interview the little girl who sang a lullaby to a bear. Charlotte found the sudden spotlight unsettling. She'd always been a quiet child, more comfortable in nature than in crowds. Strangers approached her in the street to ask for pictures, giving her stuffed bears or flowers. She overheard someone in the grocery store saying that Roger's girl must have some magical power. She knew she didn't have any magic. Her mother's lullaby was the closest thing to magic she could think of, a melody that had brought her comfort during her darkest nights. If it had calmed the bear, it was more about the gentle energy she radiated than any enchantment. Maybe the bear had been more curious than aggressive. Maybe it sensed her fear, but also her lack of hostility. It was a mystery nobody could fully explain, but one that caused a ripple of wonder through their little community. Stillwater, which once seemed only interesting for its proximity to Glacier National Park, suddenly became a hub of fascination. Tourists flocked in from neighboring towns, hoping to catch a glimpse of the singing girl or to explore the outskirts of the forest where a friendly bear was rumored to reside. As with all tall tales, details were exaggerated. People repeated second and third-hand accounts. Each time the bear grew larger, Charlotte more heroic, the lullaby more angelic. Local businesses felt the surge. Willie's Market, a small store near the main road, started selling homemade honey jars with a label featuring a cartoon bear and a little girl singing. The local diner introduced a new special called Charlotte's Bear Claw Breakfast. It was a well-intentioned nod to her story, though Charlotte herself found it a bit embarrassing. The Rogers family discovered their life changing in big ways. Though they were proud of Charlotte, they also worried about the renewed pressure on local wildlife. More tourists in the area meant more risk to the animals. Her father, Zachary, made public statements reminding visitors to respect the wilderness, keep a safe distance from bears, and not feed them. The very reason Charlotte's story was special, her calm reaction in a spontaneous, unavoidable encounter, couldn't be repeated safely by others. Meanwhile, Charlotte struggled with a swirl of emotions. She felt an odd sense of guilt that so many people were now tromping through the woods, hoping to see a bear. She wondered if her bear was safe. Was the lullaby incident some kind of sign that she should do more, or was it just a bizarre one-off event that got overblown by the press? Her parents sensed her confusion, especially her mother, who recognized the emotional toll. Emily sat with Charlotte one evening after the media attention had peaked. They were curled up on the porch, a warm blanket draped over their laps. "How are you feeling, honey?" Emily asked softly, brushing aside a strand of Charlotte's hair. Charlotte shrugged. "I don't know, Mum. Everyone keeps talking about me like I'm some kind of hero, but all I did was sing a lullaby because I was scared." "I feel weird," Emily nodded. "I know. Sometimes people latch onto a story because it makes them feel hopeful or excited. They see a little bit of magic in it. But it wasn't magic," Charlotte insisted. "It just happened." Her mother's eyes sparkled. "Sometimes the most magical things in life are the ones that just happen, honey. Maybe you touched that bear's heart somehow by not screaming or hurting it, by giving it a moment of calm. You showed kindness in a terrifying situation. That's not a small thing." Charlotte lapsed into a thoughtful silence. She remembered the bear's gentle eyes looking at her, and a tremor of warmth filled her chest. "I just hope it's safe," she said. "I don't want anyone to hurt it." Emily drew her close. "We'll do our best to protect it, sweetheart. Your dad's already working with other rangers to make sure no one hunts that bear. It's part of the local ecosystem, and it deserves respect." Over the following months, life gradually returned to a semblance of normal. The media circus abated, though the legend of the singing girl lingered in local lore. Charlotte resumed her routine, going to school, doing chores, reading novels, and occasionally helping her father with chores around the park. Sometimes, hikers recognized her. One day, a family approached her in the visitor center, holding out a battered copy of National Geographic magazine. They asked for her autograph. Blushing fiercely, Charlotte signed it, her handwriting wobbly. Deep inside, she felt an unspoken pull, a curiosity about the bear, about wildlife, about how such a brief encounter could resonate so powerfully. Whenever her father went into the park for his ranger duties, Charlotte wished she could accompany him. She dreamed of going deep into the forests, scanning the undergrowth for signs of that bear, maybe singing the lullaby to see if it would appear. But her father was cautious. He insisted that she only visit safe, well-traveled areas. Still, Charlotte felt a bond with that bear, an unspoken connection that she couldn't easily shake. She began reading every book she could find on bears, their biology, their habits, stories from different cultures. In the school library, she devoured a thick volume about the types of bears in North America. Black bears, brown bears, grizzlies, the lines between them fascinated her. She pored over pictures, read about their diets, habitats, and nurturing instincts with cubs. The more she learned, the more she felt a deep sense of respect for these majestic animals. On weekends, she accompanied her father on short hikes. She would peer at every footprint, every snapped twig, every tuft of fur caught in a bramble. Her father quietly admired her curiosity, but remained vigilant. He didn't want her wandering off in search of an actual bear. Despite her father's caution, part of Charlotte believed she might see the bear again. And though she would never do anything reckless, she held that hope close, like a secret treasure in her heart. It happened 6 months after the first incident, on a day in late fall when the air had turned chilly and golden leaves blanketed the forest floor. Charlotte and her father had gone to a secluded part of Glacier National Park to check on a potential dumping site some careless travelers had reported. They found it half a mile off a dirt road, a scattered pile of trash, plastic wrappers, soda cans, and empty containers. Charlotte knelt down, picking up a crumpled Coca-Cola can. The brand name glinted under the waning sun. She shook her head sadly. This sort of carelessness made her furious. It also put wildlife in danger, luring them out of their natural habitats and risking conflict with humans. Her father sighed and helped gather the debris into large trash bags. In the midst of the cleanup, Charlotte's eyes drifted to a cluster of nearby trees. She paused, the plastic bag in her hand forgotten. Something stirred in the distance. The undergrowth rustled in that distinct, purposeful way that made her heart pound. She stood still, straining to see. A shadow moved behind the pines. "Dad," Charlotte whispered, tugging at his sleeve. "Something's there." He followed her gaze, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. They watched for a moment. A bear emerged from behind the trees, its fur thick and dark, its muzzle sniffing the air. Immediately, Zachary tensed. 1,000 protective instincts coursed through him. He stepped in front of Charlotte, but she peered around him, eyes locked on the bear. "It's..." Charlotte's voice shook, though she wasn't entirely sure. Was this the same bear that had broken into her house? The shape and color were similar. The size, too. Her heart thudded. The bear padded forward. It seemed curious but cautious. Perhaps it smelled the food remnants in the trash pile. Zachary, carefully unslinging his pack, prepared to chase it off if necessary. But Charlotte grabbed his arm. "Wait," she breathed. "I don't think it's going to charge." Indeed, the bear paused about 20 yards away, nose twitching. Charlotte felt a tingling in her limbs, a powerful sense of déjà vu. She replayed the scene in her kitchen, remembering how she'd felt terrified. Yes, but also filled with empathy. She stared into the bear's eyes, and for a fleeting second, she felt sure it recognized her. It let out a soft, chuffing sound. Zachary urged, "We should step back slowly, Charlotte. Let's not provoke it." His protective stance reminded Charlotte of the seriousness of this moment. She gave a small nod, and yet, as they retreated a few steps, the bear didn't surge forward or run away. Instead, it watched them, as though waiting. The forest fell silent, but for the rustle of leaves underfoot. Charlotte felt a surge of courage, reminiscent of that day in the kitchen. She hummed a few notes from the lullaby under her breath. Her father shot her a startled glance, but didn't stop her. The bear's ears perked. It lowered its head slightly, not in aggression, but in a posture Charlotte recognized wary, uncertain. In that stillness, a wave of calm passed through Charlotte. She didn't sing the entire lullaby, only the first few bars. But it was enough to break the tension. The bear made another chuffing noise, then turned away, trotting off into the deeper woods. Charlotte exhaled a long, shaky breath. She hadn't realized she'd been holding it. Zachary knelt beside her, his face a mixture of relief and awe. That was, "I can't believe it," he said softly. "I don't know if it's the same bear from our house, but..." Charlotte's eyes glistened. "I think it was." In that moment, father and daughter shared an unspoken understanding. Whether it was truly the same bear, something extraordinary had happened again, the brush of two worlds meeting. As they finished cleaning up the trash, Charlotte's heart felt lighter. She could still feel the faint echo of the lullaby lingering among the pines. The encounter deepened something in Charlotte. She began to grasp not just the beauty of wildlife, but the responsibility humanity carried. She wanted to protect these creatures, to learn more about them, to create harmony where fear once reigned. This realization sparked a passion in her, a sense of purpose that went beyond the fame or curiosity that once surrounded her story. She spoke to her teachers about starting a wildlife appreciation club at school. Her mother helped her gather resources and put together a presentation that showed her classmates the importance of preserving habitats and respecting bear territories. Many kids signed up, intrigued by Charlotte's personal story. Together, they organized trash cleanup hikes in local parks, set up small donation drives for wildlife rescue organizations, and corresponded with park rangers about safe animal viewing protocols. As Charlotte grew older, her sense of identity evolved. No longer was she just the girl who sang to a bear. She became the girl who cares about bears, and the community took notice. She found a mentor in an older ranger named Barbara Gleason, who taught her about animal tracking, the complexities of ecosystem management, and even the science behind how certain sounds or calm presences might influence animal behavior. Meanwhile, her parents watched with pride. They saw their daughter blossoming into a thoughtful, empathetic soul, using her extraordinary brush with the wild to fuel a passion for conservation. While the local frenzy over her story eventually cooled, Charlotte's dedication burned brightly. And she never forgot the lessons that day had taught her. Fear can be tempered with calm understanding. Vulnerability can reveal unexpected strength. And sometimes, a simple lullaby can bridge the gap between two very different worlds. A sudden winter storm pummeled Stillwater, snapping power lines and trapping families inside dark, freezing homes. 10-year-old Charlotte stood by the window, watching ice-laden winds roar across the yard. Her father, Zachary, was out rescuing a stranded driver, while her mother, Emily, checked on elderly neighbors. When the local power failed, Charlotte braved the swirling snow to fetch firewood, realizing just how dire things were. Moments later, frantic knocks shook their front door. "Miss!" Graham burst in, breathless, pleading for help for the Jenkins family. Their newborn baby had no heat, and the roads were impassable. Emily tried to lead a rescue, but Miss Graham couldn't manage the deep drifts. Unwilling to turn back, Charlotte insisted on going alone. Fighting biting wind and hip-deep snow, she finally reached the Jenkins home, finding them desperate to warm their child. With no supplies left inside, Charlotte remembered an old caretaker's cabin that stored extra wood. Despite exhaustion, she hauled a sled full of logs back through the storm. They fueled a roaring fire just in time, saving the baby and giving the family hope. Word of Charlotte's courage spread, and the townspeople who still recalled how she'd once calmly faced down a bear were once again filled with awe. Though humbled by their praise, Charlotte simply believed she had done what anyone with a caring heart should do. In that moment, Stillwater realized that gratitude was more than a gesture, it was a reminder of how a single act of kindness could brighten the darkest night. News of Charlotte's trek through the blizzard spread through Stillwater, adding yet another extraordinary chapter to her legend. While she shrugged it off, saying anyone would have done the same, the townspeople recognized the truth. Not everyone would have, or even could have. Charlotte possessed a blend of courage and compassion that was rare, and it stemmed from something deep, an openness to the natural world, a willingness to step beyond her comfort zone to help others. When the storm finally abated, people came by the Rogers home with gifts of homemade pies, knitted scarves, and heartfelt thanks. The Jenkins baby recovered fully, and the family remained eternally grateful to Charlotte. Once again, local reporters wanted her story, connecting it to her earlier encounter with the bear. They called her a symbol of Stillwater's best qualities: resilience, compassion, a spirit of unity with the wild. Charlotte blushed at the attention. She wasn't trying to be a hero. She was simply following her heart. Yet, in doing so, she had grown profoundly. She understood that adversity can come in many forms: a wild animal, a raging storm, and in each challenge, there is an opportunity to embrace empathy, courage, and the quiet conviction that even the smallest among us can make a tremendous difference. By the time Charlotte turned 12, she had grown taller and more confident, though she still had the same bright, curious eyes. She continued her quest for knowledge, studying wildlife, volunteering at the park visitor center, and attending seminars on conservation. She read about other remarkable human-animal interactions, like rangers who rehabilitated injured bears, or scientists who studied wolves and found in them a reflection of her own passion. Her father saw in her a budding naturalist, a future ranger or biologist who might transform how people coexist with wildlife. Her mother recognized that Charlotte's empathy extended far beyond animals. She cared for the entire community. One summer afternoon, Charlotte stood on the cabin porch, gazing at the forest. In the distance, she thought she saw a familiar shape moving between the tall pines. Was it her bear, wandering free? She would never truly know. But a part of her liked to imagine that it was, and that they shared a bond forged in trust and compassion. Stillwater remained a tight-knit town. It continued to draw occasional visitors who wanted to hear about the brave little girl who once sang a lullaby to calm a bear. In time, some of the fame faded, replaced by the more pressing realities of daily life in rural Montana. But the story lived on in local lore, a testament to how one moment of empathy could change everything. Charlotte often reflected on the events that shaped her young life. They had not only tested her courage, but also illuminated the path ahead. In that pivotal day when the bear stepped into her house, she discovered the power of compassion over fear. And in the raging blizzard, she discovered within herself a courage that fueled her to save a neighbor in need. Perhaps, Charlotte realized, that was what people found so inspiring. Not that she was extraordinary by birth, but that she had chosen kindness over fear again and again when it mattered most. The forest, the mountains, and the wildlife would always hold a special place in her heart. And for the rest of her days, Charlotte carried forward that sense of wonder and responsibility, forever guided by the memory of a bear who once met her gaze in a humble kitchen, and a lullaby that bridged two worlds. Thank you so much for joining me on this incredible journey of bravery, compassion, and unbreakable bonds. Charlotte's unforgettable story reminds us of the quiet power within each of us to connect with the world, whether it's facing a wild bear or coming to the rescue during a brutal winter storm. If her journey has inspired you to see the good in unexpected places, to embrace curiosity, or to spread kindness in your own life, then her story has achieved its purpose. Now, I'd love your help in sharing this tale with others. If you found meaning in Charlotte's experiences, please show your support by giving this video a like, sharing it with friends or family who might need a spark of hope, and subscribing to this channel for more uplifting and heartfelt stories. Together, let's keep the spirit of resilience and connection alive, one story at a time.